Hi everyone, and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about context hints, which may be the most important part of ChatGPT ads. And they could also be the part that a lot of advertisers get tripped up over and misunderstand the fastest. Let me explain. If you approach context hints like they're Google Ads keywords, you might use them wrong. But if you approach them purely like a prompt, you may also use them wrong. Context hints aren't meta ads targeting, and they're not really segment targeting. They're also not interest targeting or problem targeting, solution targeting, or any one type of targeting. I think that context hints might end up being all of the above. Now, I don't have any evidence for this, and OpenAI has been pretty tight-lipped about how context hints work outside of this little snippet here that I have highlighted on the screen. Context hints describe the conversations, topics, or keywords where your products or services may be relevant. These hints guide matching, but they are not exact match targeting rules. Now, that's interesting, but it's also quite vague. It implies that whatever you put in here will be used, but it is not going to be an exclusive Venn diagram around what you put in. So according to ChatGPT here, there is not going to be a hyper-specific, exclusive radius around the words that you put in here. So that's interesting because it is different than an exact match keyword on Google. And it's also different than an exclusive audience based on interest within Meta. So I think a lot of advertisers are going to get tripped up because this is going to require us to treat things differently than keywords and differently than audiences. What context hints are instructions for the kinds of conversations where you think your ad is going to make the most sense. And I think that changes everything about how we need to think about targeting. Now, ChatGPT Ads Manager is still very early. The platform's basic, objectives are limited, creative simple. A lot of the best practices are still unknown. All the agency owners and media buyers I've talked with have different opinions on what is going to work the best. But one thing stands out. Targeting is going to work very differently. So let's talk about some different ways that you can set up your context hints. I've built out 10 different ad groups with 10 different ways to think about context hints and how you might design your own. I've taken the perspective of 10 different brands, and the way that I've structured these is the type of context hint prompt is the first word here, and the second word is the brand. So in this case, we are doing a keyword style Google prompt for the brand Nike. And so in this case, when you're thinking about keyword style prompting, you're really thinking about the obvious words that people are going to use when they describe something that they want to buy. So running shoes, marathon shoes, walking shoes, training shoes, comfortable sneakers. These are all things that are firmly within Nike's wheelhouse and that Nike may want to purchase the intent of from a keyword perspective. But let's think about the way that everybody's talking about context hints in the form of another brand that recently has been in the news, Allbirds. So if you were to think about context hints in the sense of prompting an AI agent, you would instead want to be in conversations where people are asking, what are the most comfortable shoes for walking all day? Or what shoes should I wear for travel? Are wool sneakers, which are sold by Allbirds, good for everyday use? This could be another way of thinking about a context hint in the form of what someone might type in as a prompt. But let's think about a different way to approach this. Maybe you are coming from Meta and you're thinking about media buying purely in the sense of audience intent. So let's pretend that we're HelloFresh. Now, HelloFresh is a company where people will purchase their product when they're trying to save time on weeknight dinners. They don't want to do grocery shopping. They're trying to do some easy meal planning, or they're just trying to consistently cook a bit more at home and skip the Uber Eats and the door dashing. Now, an audience intent is based on all of those different things. And so HelloFresh might be thinking about this from the perspective of what the audience is trying to achieve, regardless of their consumer demographics, regardless of what age they are, male or female, what income bracket they're in, what part of the city they live in, or if they're in the country. right? They just want to find the people that are trying to save time on weeknight dinners, reduce grocery shopping, meal plan for a family, or cook more consistently at home. And this is the way that you can approach a context hint from an audience intent sort of a framework. Similar to an audience intent, but a bit different, would be a segment. So you may know segments from Google advertising, which are basically a specific stage of life or a point in time that someone's at. For example, a DIY home owner that's planning a bathroom update, or a renter that's looking for some temporary storage. Maybe there's new homeowners researching some basic tools to fill out a garage, or contractors comparing some different material offerings for a job that they've just taken on. In any case, this is going to be relevant for Home Depot to put forward, probably not all of these at the same time, but put forward some different types of segments of customers to match up against different types of product offerings. Another way to think about this in a more durable way, whereas a segment is a point of time that you're trying to capture, an interest is, more durable. For example, someone who likes hiking is probably going to continue to like hiking over time, or if someone likes camping, right? So in the case of REI, they might be looking to continue to maintain a high share of voice of people that are talking about hiking, camping, outdoor gear, trail running, national parks, backpacking, or they're designing their next weekend adventure, right? And that's very interesting for REI to stay in topically. Even if they do not buy right then and there, REI could be a very important part of that conversation because you might need to stop by to REI to get a tent for your camping trip, or you need to get new shoes or a waterproof coat, or all of these different things could end up being relevant for REI to show up with their different products that are offered in their stores. Now, what if you're a little bit more specific and you want to be highly curated in the way that you're approaching ChatGPT ads specifically? Well, if you're thinking about Stanley Steamer, they're probably going to be very problem focused, where people have a problem right now. You're about to host a dinner party and one of your pets had an accident on the carpet, right? That's a problem that needs to be solved immediately. And so Stanley Steamer could end up being a very relevant resource for people who are asking how to remove carpet stains or get rid of a pet odor or clean their upholstery, prepare for guests or deal with a spill before it really sets in. These are all relevant things that fit firmly within Stanley Steamer's wheelhouse. And so Stanley Steamer may not want to buy a bunch of educational or interest-based things, but they do want to solve that problem for the person who can call them and, get help within the next hour or two before that big event or before that stain really sets in. So you could also think about this from the perspective of a problem that needs to be solved very quickly, especially in the case of services, where when people are in market for services, they usually want to get something scheduled the exact day that they are searching for something. But what if you're not sure what you want to advertise for, or you want to catch people when they're comparing different products? Now, a comparison ad, is a classic type of conquest advertising where you are trying to win the mind of people that are considering different types of products. So, for example, if someone say we're advertising for Casper, the mattress company, we may want to show up in conversations that have people comparing a memory foam versus a hybrid mattress to show the benefits of one or the other, to compare against another very popular online mattress company, Purple, firm versus soft mattresses, or whether a box mattress is worth it. Now, we don't know necessarily how these different comparison context hints will behave, but if they were to behave like a classic Google search comparing two different products, this would allow Casper to place a more targeted advertisement that could help convince someone to go with one of their products versus a different product or a certain type of product over another. Now, thinking about the opposite case from Stanley Steamer, what if someone's really thinking about a solution? So in the case of Roto-Rooter or a local plumber, when people have a problem that they're dealing with, they usually know what kind of solution they're looking for when it comes to plumbing. So when they need some emergency plumbing help, right, some drain cleaning, a leak repair, right, these are very obvious things that are usually going to be brought up by a homeowner or a renter acting on behalf of the owner. And it's pretty obvious what's happening, right? If there's water spraying out of a broken pipe, or there's a leak happening in the ceiling, or, the toilet's clogged and they can't fix it, right? These are all things that are very solution focused. They are problems, but really they are looking for the solution specifically. Whereas in the case of Stanley Steamer is going to be presenting itself as a solution. Roto-Rooter in this case is just going to be positioning itself as the service that is going to act as that solution. It's a little bit different, but they are very similar in how they would present. Now, let's zoom out a little bit in terms of the intent. Say you're a really big advertiser like Lowe's. Another way that you can approach a certain category would be to think about it from an educational lens. So the way to think about an educational context hint, at least the way I'm thinking about it, is this is a great opportunity for you to put in some specific resources that you may have been developing or that you have created that are really best in class in your vertical or in the space that you're trying to compete in, that you can direct people to who are learning. And that can be a really great opportunity for you to form a great relationship with people who are trying to get information. At the end of the day, we're all creating content, just like this video, where we are trying to help people understand things at a higher level, and in the hopes that when they eventually need a service that we provide, they come to us as opposed to coming to someone else. And I think this is another way that you can think about the different types of conversations that are happening with these LLMs and ChatGPT specifically. And this is a way that you could go about advertising. The last case I would say is a use case style ad. So let's say that you're advertising on behalf of DoorDash. Well, DoorDash is trying to do a lot of things, but in particular, how they might use a use case ad is for people preparing for a very specific situation. So let's say they're planning a party, or they're feeding a group, or they're ordering dinner after work. They're trying to find late night food for fourth meal, or they're comparing some different delivery options for a special occasion. All of these would be core to the type of user that DoorDash is trying to bring in and trying to get to purchase from them. So ultimately, doing something like a use case ad where you are trying to think about all the different situations that someone might be preparing for where your product or service is going to be relevant could be a great way to advertise a context. And so these are the 10 context hints that I've thought about so far, but I'm also curious about what you think. If you have any different context hints or ways that you are thinking about this early on, I'd love to hear it in the comments. I do think that these are going to become the bridge between search advertising and AI conversations as just prompting, and I don't think it's as simple as just do keywords. I also don't think it's going to be as simple as just do the same audiences that you might advertise to on Meta. Google Ads is built around queries. Meta is built around audiences. ChatGPT ads, I think, are going to be built around these really intent-rich conversations. That could be very powerful, depending on how ChatGPT and OpenAI execute on this. But I think it also means that as advertisers, we're going to have to think differently. And the winners probably won't be the people who are just doing one of these styles and just sticking it into the box. I think it will be all about understanding your specific customers' questions better than everybody else. What are they asking before they buy? What are they confused about? What are they comparing? What problem are they trying to solve? And a specific type of context that you're hinting towards, if you see what I did there, that's going to allow you to really succeed. So my take, at least so far, right, a few days into their official beta launch, is that this isn't just another targeting field. I think it's the most important part of ChatGPT ads, and they require a different mindset. Don't just think in terms of keywords. Don't just think about it in terms of interest. Think about the conversations that are being had and how you want to fit into that conversation. And if you can describe that exact moment where your product is useful in that context, you will have the best chance of making these ChatGPT ads work. If you need any help or you would like to have ChatGPT ads created on your behalf, I run a marketing agency. We run about 50 million in spend every year. You can get all of that information in the description section below. Otherwise, I will be back soon with another ChatGPT ads video and some other Google Ads videos coming soon. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.